an instructional video on finding the distance of 2 points in the coordinate plane using the Pythagorean theorem. There are 5 steps to finding the distance in the coordinate plane. Step number 1 is to connect the 2 points. This makes the diagonal line. Which is letter C, the hypotenuse. Step number 2 is to finish drawing the right triangle. You got to draw the 2 side lengths, A and B. Step 3, count the 2 straight edges. That would be A and B. Step 4, use the Pythagorean theorem. To solve for C, the hypotenuse. Step 5 is to answer the question. So we start by connecting our dots, A and B. That creates the letter C, the hypotenuse. We can go ahead and draw the right triangle. So I'm going to go down from B. I'm going to go over from A. We count our edges. A is 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. B is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares. And we use that information to plug it in the Pythagorean theorem. A squared was 4. B squared was going to be 5. 4 squared is 16. 5 squared is 25. Add those together to get 41. Last step of the Pythagorean theorem is to take the square root, which is going to give us a decimal of 6.40. Looking at that second decimal place, 4 or less, we round down. 6.4 is going to be our answer. Step 1 is to connect our dots in the graph. Step 2 is to draw the triangle. So I'm going to go over from A, and I'm going to go up from B. Step 3 is to count our edges. A is 2 squares. B is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares. That C diagonal line, the hypotenuse, is the line that we drew connecting A and B in the beginning. We use all of that information to plug our answers into the Pythagorean theorem. A is 2, B is 7, 2 squared is 4, 7 squared is 49. 4 plus 49 is 53. Last step of the Pythagorean theorem is to take the square root. Square root of 53 is going to give us 7.28. Looking at that 8 value, 5 and higher, we round up, so that becomes a 7.3. We start by connecting our 2 points. That is our diagonal letter C. We can go ahead and draw the right triangle, our 2 edges, A and B. Counting our edges, A is going to be 8 squares. B is going to be 8 squares. And we use that information to plug it into the Pythagorean theorem. A is 8, B is 8, 8 squared is 64, 8 squared is 64. Add those together and we get 128. Last step of the Pythagorean theorem is to take the square root. The square root of 128 is going to give us 11.31. Looking at the 1, 4 or less, we round down and get 11.3. For this problem, it says to find the perimeter of the trapezoid. This word perimeter means to add all the sides. So going around, this top edge is going to be 6. The side edge is going to be 8. The bottom edge, we can actually split the bottom edge in two because we have a rectangle here, 6, and we have a triangle, which is also 6. If we use our legs, A and B, of our triangle, we can find the length of our diagonal line. The bottom edge is 6, the side edge is 8. We use the Pythagorean Theorem to find the diagonal. So 8 and 6. 8 squared is going to give us 64. 6 squared is going to get us 36. 64 plus 36 is 100. Last step of the Pythagorean theorem is to take the square root, and we get an answer of 10. That's our diagonal line. But we are not finished. The question asks us to find the perimeter. Perimeter is where we add all the edges. So we're going to add the top edge, 6, plus the side edge, 8, plus the bottom edge, 6, plus the other bottom edge, 6, plus the diagonal edge, 10. We do not add the 8 that is in the middle because the perimeter is only adding the edges, the outside edges. And when we add up all the edges, we get a perimeter of 36. For this problem, we have to find the perimeter of the parallelogram. Perimeter, again, is going to tell us to add all the sides. The straight edges are easy. Going down the side, they are both 9 squares. For the diagonal lines, you have to draw the right triangle and use that information. So instead of having 9 length edges, we actually have 6 length edges, with 3 of them going to our triangle. And we have 4 length edges in the middle. We plug the triangle legs 3 and 4 into the Pythagorean theorem. 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16. 9 plus 16 is going to give us 25. Last step of the Pythagorean theorem is to take the square root. Square root of 25 is 5. That is the length of both diagonals. Both diagonals have legs 3 and 4, so they will have the same hypotenuse, 5. To solve for the perimeter, we add all the edges. So we're going to add the top 5, the side 6, the side 3, the bottom 5, the side 6, and the side 3. Remember, for perimeter, we add up the edges, the outside edges. Adding all of those up, we get a perimeter of 28. We start by connecting our 2 dots, and then we draw the right triangle. For our edge lengths, letter A is going to be 16 units. Letter B is going to be 5 units. The diagonal line we drew represents letter C. We take that information and we plug it into the Pythagorean theorem. A is 16, B is 5. 16 squared is 256. 5 squared is 25. Add those together, and we get 281. Last step of the Pythagorean theorem is to take the square root. And the square root of 281 is going to give us 16.76. Looking at that second decimal place, 5 and higher, we round up to 16.8. Again, first step is to connect our dots. That represents letter C. We go ahead and draw the right triangle. Our edge lengths for A are 4 units. For B, they are 8 units. We use this information and plug it in to the Pythagorean theorem. A squared is 4. B squared is 8, which is going to give us 16 and 64. Adding 16 and 64 is going to give us 80. Last step of the Pythagorean theorem is to take the square root. The square root of 80 is going to give us 8.94. Looking at that second decimal place, 4 and less, we round down, and so it stays 8.9. We start each problem by connecting our two dots and labeling that line C, and then we go ahead and draw the right triangle. Side A is 2 units, side B is 7 units. We take that information and plug it into the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A is 2, B is 7. 2 squared is 4, 7 squared is 49. 4 plus 49 is 53. Last step of the Pythagorean theorem is to take the square root. The square root of 53 is going to give us 7.28. Looking at that second decimal place, 5 and higher, we round up. So we round up to 7.3. For this problem, we have a blank graph, and we have to graph the points and then solve for the triangle. Point A is at 3, 6. We go over to 3, up to 6, and put our point. That's point A. Point B is at 16, so over to 16, and then up to 16. And label that point. Now we can connect the dots and label it point C, and we can draw our triangle. Side A is going to be 13 units. Side B is going to be 10 units. We take that information and plug it into the Pythagorean theorem. A squared, we're going to use 13. B squared, we're going to use 10. 13 squared is 169. 10 squared is 100. 169 plus 100 is 269. Last step of the Pythagorean theorem is to take the square root. So the square root of 269 is going to give us an answer of 16.40. The second decimal place, 0, 4 or less, we round down for an answer of 16.4.